I wish I could snap my fingers and make 4 things a reality for every person who calls CrossPointe their home church. Here they are. Being a part of someone's baptism story. When somebody's baptized, sometimes we do baptism videos. And to hear them say, hey, so-and-so invited me to church, or so-and-so prayed with me and led me to Christ or led me to faith, and I wouldn't be baptized today if it wasn't for them, that's a powerful thing, and I would want everybody in the room to be able to experience that. The second thing is a generous lifestyle. Once you realize that God gave you resources, not just for your benefit, but that overflow is for the benefit of others, and it's not spontaneous giving, but it is percentage planned giving, that you just consistently become a generous person. That's a powerful thing that I wish everyone could experience. The last 2 things I'm going to talk about today, being connected with a small group and then living a life of service that benefits others. And I'm going to break the last 2 down, so I'm going to jump right in. And you're going to think when I start that this has absolutely nothing to do with those last 2, but I promise you it does. Just hang in there with me. Luke chapter 17, verse 1, Jesus said to his disciples, things that cause people to stumble are bound to come. Come on now. Is that right? Things that cause people to stumble are bound to come. But he tags it with this. Woe to anyone through whom they come. In other words, everybody's going to stumble, but you better be careful you're not the reason they stumble. Come on now. Let me talk about a few things that cause people to stumble. Obviously, distractions will cause you to stumble, right? If your eyes are diverted from your intended destination, it's easy to stumble. I saw a guy on a social media thing the other day, and he's walking down the sidewalk. Somebody had taken one of these camera, footages and had made a little reel out of it. And he's walking down the sidewalk, and a beautiful girl's approaching, and he didn't just look at her as she was approaching. He turned. He was completely distracted, and he was still walking, but he watched her walk away and ran into a telephone pole, got a big old goose egg on his head because he got distracted, right? He didn't just stumble, he crashed. Distractions will dilute your commitment to a predetermined destination. People die every day in car accidents that didn't have to happen. They get in their car, they set their GPS for their intended destination. They hear a notification, little ringtone on their cell phone. They've received a text, and they don't pull over, but they'll pick that phone up, and they're distracted, and in the blink of an eye, distraction or disaster occurs. The same is true for the spiritual journey that we're on, folks. The same is true. Distractions cause us to lose our way. They can derail your belief system and dilute your commitment to reach the ultimate destination. Distractions cause people to stumble every single day. Isn't it true that a lot of people stumble because of people? Right? I mean, they head off to college, move into a dorm room, or start a new job, meet new people, lose their focus because of a new relationship that brought some unhealthy dynamics to the table. They've stumbled because of people. Some people can't handle success that brings financial windfall their way. I've seen people do really well financially, and during that great season of their life, they stumble away from faith. They push away from God. Trouble, pain, and tragedy often causes people who were once all in to stumble and push away from faith. Jesus said things that cause people to stumble are bound to come. And then he gave this warning. People are going to stumble, but make sure when they do, it's not because of you. You need to make sure of that. PT, you said you're going to talk about small groups and serving others, volunteering. What does stumbling have to do with any of that? Well, here's the connection between stumbling and groups, and as well as serving. Listen very carefully, because what I'm fixing to tell you is profoundly true. You can stumble away from faith. People do it every day. You can stumble away from God. You can stumble away from the church. You can stumble away from religion. But hear me loud and clear. It's almost impossible to stumble out of a community of faith. Because real community, I'm talking about a small group community, they will not let you go that easily. They just won't do it. It's a lot like family. Solomon, who is known as the wisest man who ever lived, he said it like this: 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. If they fall down, they can help each other up. In other words, if they stumble or trip, the person working beside them can help them get back to their feet. He went on, he said, but pity those who fall and have no one to help them up. People often approach me and they'll say things like, PT, I need some help. And I'll get into the conversation with them and I'll find out that their marriage is in trouble, or their kids have become very rebellious, or there's trouble on the job and they're worried about their job security, whatever that it is. And so often, some of you have had this conversation with me and you know this is a fact. So often, Sylvia and I both will respond when we get into the details of somebody's issues, and one of the first things we will ask them is this: are you in a small group? Are you in a small group? And I know the answer before they respond. 90% of the time, the answer is no. Because if they were in a small group with like-minded believers, they would have a circle of close Christian friends who would pick them up when they stumble because of things that are causing them to stumble. Small groups provide that kind of support for people in their circle. We're going to do all that we can when people come that's not in a group. When you're in a small group, though, with like-minded believers, they just won't let you stumble away from faith because you're in a community of faith together. The longer you're together, the more likely you become and the more like family you become, and they'll not let you stumble away so easily. Small groups have a tendency, and we've been amazed by some of the stories that we've heard, but small groups at CrossPointe, they have a tendency to fight for each other. I mean, to be all in, to do the very best they can to help the other person back to their feet. Christian relationships cultivated in small groups are where stumbling people get the most effective help for the problems they face. You have every right to disagree with me, but you would be wrong. Here's what I've learned about people over the last 36 years I've been a pastor. When people stumble, most of the time they won't listen to their spouse and they won't listen to their parents, a close family member. Sometimes they won't listen to their pastor. But when people stumble, they need most what they desire least: someone who has relational credibility and access. Someone who will not let you stumble away easily, but will work really hard to help you get back up and get going again. When we stumble, and everybody in the room, we all stumble. Can I get a witness? When we stumble, we need people in our circle who insist that we get up, whether we want to get up or not. And if you've not laid the groundwork for those kinds of relationships in your life ahead of time, they'll not be there when you need them the most. That's just kind of a common sense deduction. This is why I don't want you to just attend church. I want you to get involved in a community, a small community of faith. You need to be in small groups, and we're never going to give up on small groups at CrossPointe Church. I've got pastor friends that says, we gave up on small groups. They just didn't work for us. You wasn't doing it right. Because I'm telling you, small groups are the strength and the core of CrossPointe Church. And yes, we've been on a hiatus because of COVID, but we're back, baby. And we're fixing to blow this thing up, and we're going to do some great big things for God. You need to be in small group. Your middle school and high school kids need to be in squad every Wednesday night. Guess what? They break up into small groups, and that's where relationships are developed. Small groups are where Christian community is cultivated, and those relationships grow. There are some incredible stories that have come from our small groups about how a group member stumbled. They had a bad season in their life. They walked away from faith. They pushed away from the church. They shut God out. But they were unable to shut their small group out because of the relationship they had with those group members. We have, and I won't get into the details, but we've had people over the years to get upset about something that I said from the pulpit, or something somebody did in leadership that they adamantly disagreed with, and they'd come to me and say, look, I just can't support that, yada, yada, and I'm going to leave the church and go try to find something else. We've had people that have left our church, and we can't get them to leave the small group. Right? I ain't going. I'm like, you're not coming to church here? No. Well, you still in small group? Oh, I ain't leaving my group. And we like family. And I tell small group leaders, for a while, in my mind, I'm going, we need that seat. We got so many new people that's trying to get in a small group, and we got people that's gone to other churches, and we can't get them out of the groups. And I finally said, let's not get them out. Let's not worry about that. Let's focus on getting more hosts and developing more groups. They need Jesus in small groups, and once you develop community, you don't just cut family off and say we're not family anymore. You continue to worship and grow and cultivate relationships together. So we finally give up on that and said, hey, just stay in the group and love on the people that you're growing in faith together with. Amen. We have a lot of small groups rebooting today. And small groups, when people get in trouble, they'll converge on those people. They'll pick them up and help them get back on their feet. This is why wise King Solomon said, I pity those who stumble and fall and have no one to help them up. Some of you know the incredible impact that a small group can have on your life. And we're rebooting today, and some of you have never shut down. You found ways to meet during the pandemic. But here's the good news. We have about 15 groups that are going to be here today for you to sign up and get into a group. And you need to ask questions and find out where they meet and what their studies are going to be and all that stuff. But we do have open seats for you to be able to get into a group. But we still need more group leaders and more hosts. We're doing everything we can to make it as easy as we can by opening up space in the Kids Point room and then ultimately in this building if we need more. But we want to do the best we can. Normally we do those in home settings, but during the pandemic, until things start taking a positive turn up, we're going to host those here in maybe what we would determine to be safer environments. In the meantime, we need more group leaders. We need hosts to step up so that when people stumble, there will be a faith community that can help them get back on their feet again. So vitally important. Listen, if you're sitting there thinking something like this, plain talk's easily understood. Can y'all handle some plain talk? If you're sitting there thinking, I was in a group before, but PT, I had a bad experience. So what? So what? You've had a bad experience with your barber or your hairstylist, but it didn't stop you from going out and finding another barber or another hairstylist. Some of you got mad at a doctor that didn't do just like you thought he ought to. It didn't stop you from finding another doctor. So find another group. Get connected. Don't let one bad experience mess you up. Put your big boy pants on. Come on now. And get connected with a new group today. Through the years, I can conservatively say that about 90% of our small groups have been absolutely awesome, phenomenal. And there's only about 10% in all these years that we've had to try to help deal with problems. Get back in the game. Look at somebody and say, get in the game. Connect with a group today, okay? Do we have any small group leaders in the room that's going to be signing up? You have open seats? Any small group leaders in the room? Stand to your feet real quick. Some of them we've got about 15 banners back there that they're going to be holding up at the end. I want you to look around. These folks have open seats, and I'll introduce them, or Tim will, or Josh will at the very end. So it's going to be a great opportunity for you. Now, before I close, and yes, I'm getting ready to close. God bless you one and all. Because you need time to get connected. I want to tell you how you can help us create irresistible environments at CrossPointe and reach people who are far from God. I want you to think of someone. You got to participate with me, okay? I want you to think of someone that you love, somebody that you admire and respect, but they're not a believer. They are far from God. I want you to get a picture of them in your mind right now, who that person is. And I know there's probably a long list, but I want you to think of the one you prayed the most for. Maybe that's a spouse or a parent, your teenage child that has no interest in God and is pushing further and further away. Someone that you love, somebody that you would love to see come to faith this year. And I want you to imagine that this scenario plays out in their life. One day they approach you and they say, hey, I think I'd like to join you at church this coming Sunday. Would you save me a seat? And your heart leaps because you didn't think this day would ever come, right? And so you're excited and you go, yeah, I'll save you a seat. But here's scenario number one. When they get here, there's no police officer out there waving and smiling at everyone. Instead, the officer out there yells at them as they turn in and demands that they slow down. They pull into the driveway, but there was no one to put out the big orange cones that help people know which way to go so there's not chaos in the parking lot. They drive past the cross out front, but they're confused. They're not sure where they're supposed to park because there's no one in the parking lot to welcome them and let them know that we have VIP parking for first-time guests. They finally figure that out and, get parked. And luckily, they end up in the right VIP spot. But when they get out of the car, they're not sure what to do next or where to enter the building because there's no one to greet them and help them unload the kids and get them checked into Kids Point. They spot the main entrance sign and they make their way to the double glass doors. They've got their hands full with diaper bags and kids pulling them in all directions. They struggle to open the doors to try to get everybody inside for church. They finally enter the hallway, but there's no greeters there to say, "Welcome to CrossPointe, we're glad you're here." In fact, they're not feeling very welcome at all so far. They finally bump into someone and they ask, "Is there anything here for my kids? And if there is, where do I take them?" And that person says, I think there's something. Matter of fact, I think they've got a building just for kids out back where you're supposed to take those. And it's out back. And they kind of point them in the direction that they need to go. So they load up their kids again. They go back outside and they walk all the way around the property to find the entrance to the Kids Point building. Up the ramp they go, through another set of glass doors and into the entryway of CrossPointe or Kids Point. There's a bunch of computers in their entryway, but there's no one there to help them check their kids in. So they're kind of, they stick their head into a classroom and they ask the question, "Can somebody help me and tell me where my kids need to go?" They finally get their kids settled and head back to the main building, walk through the double doors and spot the coffee shop. And they think, "Well, that's cool. I'll grab a cup of coffee before I go in." They step up to the counter to place their order, and the person at the register says, "What do you want?" "Well, what do you have?" "Read the sign." They find, kind of like McDonald's. We ain't talking Chick-fil-A on this one. We're talking McDonald's. They finally get their coffee, and they head toward the auditorium where they're stopped by someone at the door and says, "Hey, don't you know you can't take that in the auditorium?" "I'm sorry, I didn't know." "Well, you know now. Drink it or toss it." So they toss their $4 latte because they can hear the service is starting and they need to find you because you're the person that they're coming to sit with and you're saving a seat for them. They finally find you, but they have to step over a whole row of people to get to the seat that you've saved. The music starts and the praise team begins to sing songs they've never heard before. There's no overhead screens with the words on them because there's no cameras, because there's no volunteers to run those cameras and no volunteers in the sound booth to put the words up on the screen. They're just sort of lost and wore out from trying to figure this church thing out. And by the time the speaker gets up to preach, they've already checked out in their mind and decided church is not the place for them. You had one chance. The person that I asked you to think about a while ago. You had one chance to get someone you love to lean into faith, and we didn't have all the pieces in place to help them make a God connection. Instead of removing barriers to help them find God, we created barriers to keep them from God. That's one scenario. And listen, folks, that scenario is being played out in churches all across the country today. And it's a shame. It has happened here before, but we've been on mission to change that. Let me give you the second scenario. When Larry Bry was here from Elevation Church and shared with my leaders out back, he did a variation of this, and it has stuck with me as it has with all of our leaders, and I wanted to share scenario number 2. The person that you love shows up at CrossPointe Church. Your first-time guests, they pull into our parking lot, and the first person they see is Officer Vargas. Come on now. He's smiling and waving, and what gets them is he's not just waving at people pulling in, he's waving at people passing by. We've had people come to this church because of Officer Vargas. It's amazing. Someone on the maintenance team, usually Glenn, but like today it was Mark. They put out the orange cones, making it easy for your guests to know which way to go in the parking lot, so there was no problem there. They drive under that big 50-foot cross that's out there. And as soon as they get past the cross, they see a sign that says, "First-time guest, ? Stop here." And there is a sweet, attentive attendant there, like Laurel this morning. And she says to somebody that rolls their window down, "Welcome to CrossPointe. We have a VIP parking spot for you right over there. And after you park, somebody's going to be over to help you get your day at CrossPointe started." They go over, and it's been real easy so far. They park in that VIP spot. And when they get out of the car, a volunteer steps up and says, "Welcome to CrossPointe. I see that you have your kids with you. Would you like to check them into Kids Point?" It's an incredible environment, beautiful facility that they're going to absolutely love. The volunteer doesn't send them or point out the building to them. They walk with them to Kids Point and help them get their kids checked in. There are Kids Point volunteers in the entryway, and they're saying, "Hey, don't worry about your kids. We got this. Your kids are going to have a phenomenal day here. Go enjoy adult worship, and we'll see you when it's all over." On the way back to the main building, the volunteer that escorted them back is now escorting them back to the main building. And they say, "By the way, in your VIP bag, you're going to find a coupon for a free latte or a cappuccino in our coffee shop. You can use that today or the next time you come back." As they approach the double glass doors, there are volunteers there to open those big heavy doors for them. And those volunteers say, "Welcome to CrossPointe. We're glad you're here." They approach the coffee shop, and if PT's in the lobby, he cuts them right to the front of the line. Because I see that VIP packet, right? And they place their order, and as they're handed this order, Heather or one of her staff says, "Hey, by the way, just so you know, we don't take coffee cups into the auditorium, but we do have spill-proof cups, and you're welcome. We sell those, but if you didn't come prepared, we'd like to give you one today." They make their way into the lobby with their spill-proof CrossPointe mug. And more volunteers are there to greet them and welcome them with smiles, handshakes, and hugs. They walk into the main auditorium and they see the room is filling up, but no problem. Another volunteer steps up and they recognize that they're kind of trying to figure things out, and they'll say something like, "Do you need help finding a seat?" And they're like, "I'm here to meet a friend." "Who is it? I probably know them." And they say, "Oh yeah, they're sitting right over here," and they carry them to their saved seat. They get to their seat in a few minutes, the lights go down, the screens come on, the music starts, the words to the songs pop up on the screen, the different camera angles provide great views of what's happening on stage, and they don't have to miss anything. Next thing you know, your guest is humming along and singing the songs, and they're actually able to connect just a little bit with the worship environment that has been set so strategically for them to engage and connect with God. The speaker gets up and shares a message that makes sense and doesn't try to talk over their head with big religious words. Instead, he communicates in a way that they understand and provides practical application so they can walk away with a plan for the week that'll make their life better. You know what just happened in that second scenario? Someone you love just had a great first experience at church. They're not pushing away, but now all of a sudden they are leaning in. It's what you hoped for. It's what you planned. It's what you had depended on that would happen. Here's what I want to say about that. If all the pieces are in place, in other words, if all of those things that we just described to you, from Kids Point to Fit Team to parking lot, all that stuff, and we got enough people to staff our ministry plan, if all the pieces are in place and we can pull that off, the person you love and have been praying for to find faith will be encouraged to lean into faith instead of being disgusted by church and the lack of attention to detail, and CrossPointe will have helped somebody find their way to the cross of Jesus Christ. Somebody say amen. Amen. That's the best bit of water I've ever had here, because Mark put it in the freezer and it's got ice in it. Thank you, Mark. So let me ask you as we wind this down, which one do you want CrossPointe to be when someone you love finally decides to give church a try? I'm sure it's scenario number 2, right? Of course you want the last one I described. Well, guess what, folks? It takes a huge team of well-trained volunteers to pull that off every week. And there are elements in the last story that we have not been able to do during the COVID pandemic. We just don't have enough volunteers. And the team huddle people will tell you some Sundays, it's so thin out there that I'll say, hey guys, let's cross the T's and dot the I's of the most important things today. I know our whole plan can't be carried out today, but let's make sure we fill the biggest holes in the net and do the very best we can do. We're not going to be able to do everything, but let's do the best we can. Why does that happen? Because we need about 60 volunteers in every service, in the main building and in Kids Point, to pull it off and do it with excellence every week. Plus about 20, I think, Josh, at Squad on Wednesday nights. Let me tell you what I believe and why it's important for you to find a ministry team and get in the game today. I believe Jesus and the message of Jesus are transformational, personally, socially, and culturally. I believe our mission here at CrossPointe to reach people far from God is the most important mission on this planet. I believe that what we do here matters to God, and I believe it matters to people that are far from God. Maybe somebody that you love, you've been praying for. I believe the local church is the vehicle by which society is vastly improved, families are restored, and relationships are healed. I believe many local churches have lost their way, and they're not transformational. They've become more social. CrossPointe is on mission to change that. I believe God has given us a season of influence in our community that we should not take for granted. And we're reaching people other churches have not been able to reach. Listen very carefully. The reason that our doors are still open when so many other churches have permanently closed theirs during the pandemic is because of the volunteers that have hung in there with us, making sure the most important elements of our ministry strategy are carried out with excellence every single week. They didn't quit on us because they know how important the work we do is every single time we come together. They realize it's not just about parking cars or opening doors or caring for the children. It's about irresistible environments where children, students, and adults are challenged to allow God to invade their lives, relationships, finances, their businesses. I believe every teenager and every child in America should experience what our children and what our students experience at CrossPointe every single week in Kids Point on Sunday or in Squad on Wednesday night. I believe all of this should be normal. The energy, the relevance, and the authenticity. I believe we should be shocked. We should be appalled and offended when we walk into a church, and God forbid that it would be this one, where there is no life. No life change, no kids, no students, no joy. We refuse to let CrossPointe become another irrelevant church. I don't care about what COVID has done and how it's devastated so many lives. The Church of Jesus Christ, the Bible has promised us the gates of hell, that includes COVID, will not prevail against it. The church needs to rise up and be the church. We're not going to let that happen on our watch just to become irrelevant. We're serious about introducing people to God. We need more volunteers who'll dedicate a small slice of their week to this great cause. We're on mission to change people's perception about church, about God and His Son Jesus. And if you would make up your mind to get off the sidelines and get in the game somewhere, we could reach a lot more and ultimately be a part of God's plan in the world to change the world. We need you here. And unfortunately, during the pandemic, more than we've ever needed you before. Every volunteer adds value to this great cause. We understand, and I posted about this, but we understand that every person's role on our team contributes to the bigger picture, whether you're holding a door or holding a microphone. Right. Every person matters. We need every piece in place to reach people far from God. Amen? As I call your name, my ministry staff, I want you to run up here real quick. Be careful. Don't trip and fall. That'll ruin a good sermon, okay? Matter of fact, Tim, you be the last man up, and you stand there and make sure that they get up safe, okay? But we're going to come right over here. Fit team, Marissa, come on up. We call it the Fit Team, but it's our first impressions team. This is our parking lot, our greeters, our information booth, everything that it takes to make a great first impression at CrossPointe Church on Sunday morning. Then we have Squad. Josh, this is our student ministry. Please help him up the stairs. He's wearing the wrong jersey. He's liable to trip and fall before he crosses the goal line. Okay, anyway. This is middle school and high school ministry at CrossPointe. Kids Point, this is Amber. Is Amber in the room? Come on up, Amber. This is preschool through 5th grade and our new Kids Point facility out back. So make sure that you guys talk to Amber. There really needs some staff back there. Production team, that's Micah. That's everything that it takes for us to do ministry and worship on Sunday. From media to sound, video, lights, cameras, and action. So I don't even know what to do with that. Coffee shop. Heather, where you at? Heather is the one that started our whole coffee shop ministry and still doing it with excellence. And every now and then I go back there and get a cup of coffee to make sure that it's still tasting as good as that first cup that you hooked me up with, and it does. It's so good. What is it that we get? I get the PT special, but what is it? So good, named after your pastor. Good stuff. Our maintenance team, Mark is standing in for Glenn today. These guys carry a heavy load for us around here with moving chairs. My God, we're always moving chairs around here. Power washing and keeping the place looking good, repairs that come up, anything maintenance related. Glenn and Mark need a great team to pull that off. Our security team is Bill Wade. Bill's coming up. Is Bill here? Yeah, Bill's coming up. And we learned a long time ago. Most of you don't know why we started a security team. I got a phone call from a guy one day that just got out of prison, and he wanted money, and we didn't have money to give. But I said, hey, we're happy to give you food, and we'll load your car down. He got raving mad, threatened to come down here and kill me. And I said, I'll be the guy standing in the parking lot with a 45 on my hip. Come on. And Sylvia's like, don't say that. Don't you do that. Don't you do. And I got off the phone and I started thinking about it. And I said, I need some people watching my back. Because I don't know how to shut my big mouth sometimes. And so Bill and Daryl started building originally a great security team. And having trained security is vital in the time that we live in. And then our small groups coordinator, our Life Point director is Pastor Tim. One more time, if you're a small group leader in the room, would you stand to your feet? If you're going to be signing people up today, is that Keith and Candy way in the back? See you guys back there. Some of these folks are making some extra seats so that you can come and be a part of their small groups, and you're going to need to find them. They'll be holding signs. Josh is going to come tell you about the directive for that and how to connect with a small group and how to sign up to join a ministry team that's here on the stage. Take it away. I'm actually completely done. All you.